if you look at the stories that they tell, their mythology, you can find the hero's journey and the things that they talk about. And I was gifted this book by my son when I was in the final stages of writing this, and he said, you need to read this book before you finish writing yours. And it really made a big difference because there were things that Campbell talks about in this book, and I thought, oh, I never thought about that. I need to include that in the book. And so it made a difference. It changed some of my thoughts and things that I felt were important, and they wound up being in the book. Yeah.
So you mentioned the importance of mentors.
Yeah.
Is there a particular mentor that guided you, or what mentors do you have that you were inspired in your book?
I would say that I have a lot of mentors that I've had through the years in different things. I think mentors are really important. Whenever you start a new journey, you need a mentor, someone who's been through that before. Thinking about writing and thinking about the hero's journey, I think I would go back to 1983 when I first moved to Utah. I started taking first year of college up at the University of Utah. I was taking a class called Intellectual Traditions of the West, and it was a 2-year program. And that was when I was introduced to the hero's journey. And we started with Homer's Odyssey and what Odysseus did and how he went. We really looked at that. We looked at Grendel and Homer and the Iliad and Dante, and we went through all of these different things. I really, that was when I fell in love with Dante's Inferno. And Dante wanted to go to heaven, and he started climbing the hill to get up to heaven, and this jaguar comes down and chases him down the hill and says, you really can't do this. You can't get to heaven without going through hell. You've got to go on the journey. And so he meets Virgil, who is his mentor. And Virgil from the Aeneid guides Dante through hell and through all the circles and all the people that they meet and all the challenges that they go through and leads him up there. So why am I telling you this story? The teacher, her name was Dr. Stephanie Pace. And I have tried to get in contact with her so many times through the years. She still lives here, as far as I know, in Salt Lake City. I haven't been able to get in contact with her, but she really affected my life and how I thought about myself and what I was doing in life. Still to this day, I think about the lessons that we learned in reading those stories. And so I think that she was a really big mentor for me in writing the story. As I wrote the story, I thought about what would she say, what would she think about this, and I think that her teachings really guided a lot of what I did. But she wasn't at all the only mentor that I had. I could name 20 more of them. But in this instance, I think she's the one that I would think about. Good question, though. Thanks.
Thank you.
Anything else?
What was your favorite part writing Dan Tesson?
My favorite part?
Mm-hmm. Or do you have a favorite part of the book?
I had a lot of fun with some of the smaller stories in there. So there's stories within stories. And there are some chapters where I don't want to tell you the story in the chapter because I'd like you to read it and enjoy it as I did. But one of the things that I found is in the editing process, I read the book again and again and again. And something that really struck me is there's some very sad things that happened. Dan? No, I'm not going to tell you. There's some very sad things that have happened to Dan in the book, and you read about them right away. And even what we were reading today kind of alluded to those things. And I got choked up as I'm reading it. And then there are other times where he tells a joke, and I'm thinking about a particular chapter where he kind of tells Dan tells John what's been going on. He kind of outs himself and says, hey, I've got these powers. And he does it, he tries to not freak John out. And they talk about it, and they get to this point, and I'm just rolling on the floor laughing. And I'm like, this is not normal. You know what the book says, you wrote it. And yet I was having a good time reading it, where I felt strong emotions when he felt strong emotions. And I think that, and I've talked to other authors and they say, yes, that this is normal, we all go through this. But I was surprised by it because I had never experienced it before. And I think being able to write something that I enjoy going back and reading, I think for me was a lot of fun, and I really enjoyed it. If I couldn't go back and read it again because it was too boring, then everyone else would think that it was boring. But the fact that I enjoy going back again, I hope other people find it enjoying. So I really enjoyed that part of it.
So on that note, what was a hard part about writing? Or if you hit a writer's block, how did you get over that? And did that impact Dante and anything he went through?
Yeah, there were things, so there's a couple of authors that I follow, and they talk about, one of my favorite authors is Brandon Sanderson. And he gives lectures down in the next valley from us. And he talks about two methods that authors write. One of them is you write out kind of an outline, and then you follow that outline and write things out. The other one, I don't know exactly what he calls it, I think it's discovery, where you kind of sit down and you just put yourself in the character of the person that you're writing, or in that book, and you start writing and you kind of discover the story as you're writing. And I did kind of a combination of the two of those, and so there were a couple of times where I got stuck and I'm like, oh, I don't really know where to go. I know where I'm going, but I don't know what to do. And they were on this journey, and so one of the things that I found really helpful to get me over writer's block is they're taking two journeys. They're taking an emotional and a mental journey, but they're also taking a physical journey. And so as they take this journey from Southern California to Washington, they have to go through all these different states. And so I would kind of look at the history of the states, and I would pick a town that I wanted them to stop in for some reason, and I would make it part of the story and kind of weave it into what I was doing. And that gave me enough extra material that I could talk about it, and it broke the writer's block, because now I had other things that I wanted to talk about. And as soon as you start writing something, you have 5 other ideas that you want to talk about, and you can't talk about all of them. You gotta trim some of the branches back, right, and keep the main one going. But I think that helped me get through the writer's block quite a bit, as I would find something like that and go, oh, this is good, I gotta talk about this, so that's
Wonderful.
Well, cool. Well, thank you so much for coming out tonight. I really appreciate it. We've got books out. Thank you. We've got books and mugs and bookmarks out on the table. If you'd like to buy some, I'd be happy to sign books. Otherwise, I hope you have a wonderful evening and a great weekend. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Sean.